Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode If You Could Hide to Cola podcast. My name's Daniel. This is my brother Clive.
Hello, everybody. Daniel, I've actually looking forward to this episode a lot. It was really fun to study, and over the past year, there has been a few times where we look at the "Come Follow Me" stuff, and we go, "Oh, this is going to be quite difficult," and you wonder how a teacher can get through an hour of it. But this one, like I said, I was really excited to study it, and there's so much doctrine in here and history in here that we're going to get into today.
Well, I wasn't as excited as you myself, but I am excited to see what you've got and what stuff you're going to be able to take us through. I do have the quote, Clive, though.
Okay.
And this is not anything special. It's actually just something quite humorous that I found. I have quite a collection of the Joseph Smith papers in hard copy here in my office. And so from time to time in preparing for the subject, I will go and read the journals, the entries of the day, and with the weeks and months surrounding the chapters, the sections that we're reading from. Anyway, this one I came across from the 7th of April in 1843. And there's a mixture in the journal. Some of them are literally 3 pages. Some of them are pages and pages. This particular one is multiple pages, the journal entry from the 7th of April. It doesn't say that it was anything special. Of course, the 6th of April is the day prior, and that is also a long revelation as well on this particular day. But in this one, anyway, so good things and bad things are happening. People are being they're being brought to trial, I guess, in terms of church practices. And on one case, here, I'll read this very short. It's silly, but anyway, I found it. Hiram said, "This is Hiram said he felt it is his duty to defend the committee so far as he could. He would as soon go to hell as be a committee, but to make a comparison for the temple committee." So this is a really weird structural sentence. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Hiram felt it was his duty to defend a committee, and he was soon as go to hell as to be a committee. So Hiram finishes talking, and he says, "But to make a comparison for the temple committee, full stop. A little boy came in and said he saw an elephant on a tree, and they did not believe it, and they looked, and it was only an owl."
Okay. Is that part of the same sentence as before? It's
a separate sentence.
Okay.
It doesn't make any sense to me at all, but I thought I found that and I would share it with you. And I'm imagining that there's a committee and people are talking to each other, and all of a sudden this boy rushes in and opens the door to where all these members are, these senior members of the church. And he's like, "There's an elephant in the tree," and they go to look and it was an owl. And obviously it had so much of a bearing that it goes into the minutes. Very strange addition. I guess if you're a good historian, you leave out no detail. And certainly that's what's happened in this case.
Yeah, that's so odd. That's really odd.
It is.
to put it in there.
Yeah.
Like it's not even
strange.
Later on this has something interesting happen. Like it's just part of right in the middle of this is ridiculous. Like,
yeah,
it's funny.
Yeah. So bizarre. Okay. Clive, I just thought I'd just take a minute. I wanted to just bring up some historical things that aren't covered in the curriculum, but are happening that I'm not sure if our listeners are aware of. The Relief Society has now been formed as women's organization on the earth. There is other female organizations that you could argue have more members, but the Relief Society is one structure and it's the same all over the world. Is the largest. The Relief Society is up and running. Emma Smith, of course, is the president of the Relief Society. Joseph Smith has gone to trial and gone to jail again. Those people listening to our conversation last week would be aware that Joseph was in hiding because he was accused of shooting Governor Boggs. Him and Porter Rockwell are actually accused of shooting Governor Boggs. Porter Rockwell was in the area at the time. He says he was visiting family. Joseph, of course, was not in the area at the time. There's a guy called John C. Bennett who was absolutely hating on the church. He would go and write a book about how bad the church was. He would write newspapers. He actually says to the people in Missouri, actually, I think he actually publishes in the newsletter that Joseph Smith prophesied that Boggs would be shot. And so therefore Joseph is the key guy that needs to be arrested here. So Joseph is in and out of thing. Eventually he gives himself up. He goes to a court. He manages to go to a local court where the judge agrees that his arrest is illegal and releases him. Then a couple of months later, he's arrested again. This time the people don't they don't let him go to a local judge. And then there's 100 of these Nauvoo Legion, which is the Mormon militia, you could say. There's 100 of them gather up and force this trial to go to a local person in Illinois. And Joseph again is told that he's being arrested illegally. So lots of things are happening, and I raise that because, of course, we've talked a couple of times, Clive, that the time difference here is so big. We've got a couple in 1841, we've got a couple in 1842, we've got a couple in 1843, and time is skipping. And in reality, Joseph is in trouble with the law a lot. He's, I think in his whole life, I'm sure I've read that he was legally accused more than 150 times. I probably should fact check that, but I'm sure I've read that somewhere. So he is definitely, people are going after him all the time. And so now we get to this point where he's only got just over a year to live. So when we go into section 129, he's been out of the court system. He's been made a free man only for about 3 or 4 weeks. He's arrested, actually, I think whether it be Christmas Day or Boxing Day in 1842, when he spends a couple of weeks fighting this trial. Prophet is dealing with a lot of this stuff. The Book of Abraham is also released in the Times and Season, the church's newspaper. Joseph finally gets to translating the Book of Abraham, and now that's out. And people are talking about that as well. There are saints moving in from England. There are saints moving in from all over the country. Nauvoo is a big place. Joseph at one point finds a vein of coal that is dug up. Places are being built. The temple, of course, is being built. There's a baptismal font there that people are baptizing for the dead in. This is an industrial city. This is a big place where lots of people are living. So as we go into 29, 30, 31, 32, certainly plural marriage is an issue at this time. Joseph has multiple wives at this stage. Emma is part of it, sometimes not part of it in other times. Brigham Young has a second wife. Mary Ann is his original wife, and then Lucy Ann is his second wife. Lucy Ann Decker is his second wife. William Smith, I know I'm ranting here, but I'm just thinking of all these things that are going on that are leading to the prophet. Prophet's about to be martyred, and there's so much going on. 100 and something missionaries around. There's heaps missions that are in Hawaii by this stage. Of course, we've already mentioned going across to England.
So, yeah, well, that's a lot of historical information. There's a lot of historical information. Like I said, we've really got a year left of Joseph. So there's a lot of information that he's given. Not that he knows his time's coming up, but with everything going on, he can't really afford to go back to prison and struggle, and everyone else struggling when he's got so much revelation he's still got to give. So the next couple of sections, I mean, they're not written down as questions and answers, but a little bit of them is people asking him questions and he answering them. So, like, for example, section 131, that is someone asking him specific questions. And so that's why it looks like each verse is breaking up into, that doesn't make sense with the previous verse. But should we get straight into section 129 then, Daniel?
Yeah.
And just go from there? Yeah?
Okay.
All right. So section 129, it's essentially, it's all about angels, right? And what is an angel and the types of angels and things like that. My question to you, it's not really a question, but you can answer it. It's, what is an angel? What would you describe as an angel?
Heavenly messenger?
Yeah, heavenly messenger.
Is that too broad?
I mean, it's very, very broad.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Like, section 129 is about angels. I did an Elders Quorum lesson, I think it was the beginning of this year, only on angels. And that went for an hour. So I'm going to try and condense down an hour's worth of, talking about angels to
Okay.
a few minutes so we can talk about all the other sections. But there's so many different angels out there. And one of the examples that I used in my lesson was Elder Holland. When he was a child and he was lost, he dragged into this river, and went to the other bank, and he was scared and he was cold. And his father came out, and he couldn't really see him properly because his eyes were real blurry. But, to him, his father was this angel that appeared and rescued him. So, yes, I mean, you can describe an angel as a messenger of God, but really an angel is anyone doing the Lord's work. So, but, this one specifically describes it in different ways. Now, for us, an angel is, let's say, for example, before we get into it properly, that they're a resurrected being, okay? So they were someone who lived on earth and then died, gained a body, came back to earth with a message. But many, many religions, and I say many as in, yes, many, many religions, believe that angels are these superior beings to people. God created angels, and then, because he wanted to be worshipped, he then created people. And, there's no basis on that. Like, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. The only basis that someone's ever tried to explain to me that this is the case, well, not there's a few, like the cherub, like when it describes what that is, it describes it as this weird monster-like creature. But in Genesis, right, it talks about these giants in the land and how they came about. It says in Genesis, well, I thought I'd written down, but I'll just read it. Genesis chapter 5, verse 4. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bore children to them, and they became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. So a lot of religions believe that angels came down and got together with human women and created these giants. And that's how they describe it. And, so it's just a very, very strange thing. But Joseph clears it up completely about what angels and what people are. And he breaks it up into categories that there's two types, okay? He says that one, an angel is a resurrected personage that we've talked about, having a body of flesh and bones.
And that's interesting, Clive, in terms of they're already resurrected. So these are very specific people. Am I right to assume that when we read in the Bible, in the New Testament, that the tombs were opened and those people were resurrected? Is that them?
Well, that is some of them, because it tells in the Bible when the tombs were opened that they came and they preached. So yeah, most definitely. There are, Moroni was resurrected when he came and visited Joseph, but certainly Moses was. So there is examples out there, but it does give an example of Jesus Christ. It says in verse 2, for instance, Jesus said, "Handle me and see, for a spirit hath not flesh and bones, as ye see me have."
Right.
So that's a resurrected being. Then the second one that he gives an example of, the spirits of just men made perfect, they who are not resurrected, but inherit the same glory. So basically, anyone that comes down and speaks to men are messengers of God, are angels. But, only those that will come down and give a glorious message, because obviously there's other things which we won't
we're talking
really get into
here,
details now.
If I think about some specifics, if I think about Peter, James, John giving the Melchizedek priesthood, if I think about John the Baptist, if I think about these people, they are certainly in this category because they physically laid their hands upon Joseph and Oliver and ordained them both. Well, certainly Peter, James, and John ordained them to be an elder. So they're certainly in that category, right?
Most definitely in that category. And I don't have specific examples of the spirit ones, but Joseph Smith does give us a bit more of an explanation of that. He says in Teachings of the Prophet Joseph Smith, spirits can only be revealed in flaming fire and glory. Angels have advanced further, their light and glory being tabernacled, and hence they appear in bodily shape. The spirits of just men are made ministering angels to those who are sealed unto eternal life, and it is through them that the sealing power comes down. So, there is the two types of angels, and the ones in the spirit form, they come down in this glory and this brightness. And it's not to say that resurrected beings don't do that also, but there's actually a funny story about well, I'll just talk about it. It's in a History of the Church. It says, this is Joseph Smith talking. He says, a man came to me in Kirtland and told me he had seen an angel and described his dress. I told him that he had seen no angel and that there was no such dress in heaven. Then he grew mad and went into the street and commanded fire to come down out of heaven to consume me. I laughed at him and said, you are one of Baal's prophets. Your God does not hear you. Jump up and cut yourself. And he commanded fire from heaven to consume my house. So it's just interesting the humor that he's got there, you know. Not only did he say that's not, you know, dress, but then, you know, because the man commanded fire, like Joseph Smith, when he says cut yourself, like he's referring to Elijah when the Baal's or Baal or whatever you want to call it, his prophets came to Elijah and said, you know, my God can rain fire down, and they cut their wrists as like a sacrifice to their God for the fire to come down. So that's Joseph mocking him, saying, "Oh, you're just like the prophets and Elijah. Go cut your wrists and then command the fire." So it's really interesting, you know, that he approaches
the way
it that
he's gone about it. Yeah.
And so there's a couple of interesting things about angels. And so in verse 4, it says, when a messenger comes saying he's a messenger from God, offer him your hand and request him to shake hands with you. So, you know, this is a gesture that we do at church all the time. And if he be an angel, he will do so, and you will feel his hands. And if he be a spirit of a just man made perfect, he will come in his glory, for that is the only way he can appear. Ask him to shake hands with you, but he will not move, because it is contrary to the order of heaven, and to a just man to deceive. So he knows that he's a spirit, and so I can't shake your hand, so I'm not even going to try. I'm not even going to deceive and try to. Now, what's really interesting about this is verse 8. If it be a devil as an angel of light, when you ask him to shake hands, he will offer you his hand, and you will not feel anything. You may therefore detect him. Now, what's interesting about that is one of Satan's angels could say, no, I'm an angel in spirit, so I'm not going to do that. But it shows that their agency is no more. They don't have that agency. Satan tried to come down and destroy the agency of man. And ironically, it's been saved, but now he's had his agency taken away from him, because they must offer you and they must try to deceive you.
They don't have a choice. They don't have agency to even try to fool you in that way. Is that what you're saying?
And that's what I'm saying. And look, there might be a theory of mine, but it just makes sense to me that that's what Joseph Smith's saying. You try and offer and they will try and deceive you. Well, then, you know, that agency that they, you know, let's say, quote unquote, tried to protect and tried to get rid of to save us all. Well, they've lost that. And so it's a really interesting concept.
Yeah, nice one. It really just ends. These are 3 grand keys whereby you may know whether any administration is from God. This is a quick information that's nice to have, and be aware of it. It's kind of how I read section 129.
Yeah, and it made me wonder if there was a lot of people saying, "Oh, I've seen an angel. I've seen an angel." You know, there's obviously that story that I example of, but you know, I wonder if that's why Joseph's like, "Well, I've got to explain to you what if you do, or what you do if you do."
Clive, to be quite honest, I didn't really care for that section. It's like it's a nice thing. I'm more interested in what your thoughts are on section 130, and namely, as we go on, section 129, of course, it's information, but section 130, how quickly can we get throughout the white stone given to a person in the celestial kingdom? I'm going to assume that you know way more about this than me. Is what do you know?
I mean, we can definitely skip to that, since, you know, it took up a lot of time. I do have a lot between there, but yeah, you're right. Let's just get into
what else is there? I mean, it's another revelation from Joseph on April the 2nd, just a couple of days before the anniversary of the church.
Well, actually, it's funny how this section came about. So this section came about because Orson Hyde went and spoke to a whole bunch of people saying that the Savior will come down on a white horse, and God is a warrior, and when he comes back, it'll be our privilege for him to dwell in our hearts. And at dinner, Joseph said to him, "Would you like me to correct some of the things you got wrong?" Which is definitely a super polite way of saying it. And Orson Hyde said,
Please.
I would be thankful to receive that.
Yeah, right.
Which,
Yeah, nice. I know I've pushed us to verse 11, but there was a couple of things that I did also find interesting about angels who ministered to this earth, but those who do belong or have belonged to it. And so there's this cosmic information we're given here that there are other worlds and there are other angels, and what's going on in this world is going on in other worlds. But the angels that come to this world are ones that have lived in this world, and they cannot overlap, I guess. So again, more information. And then there's a description of the where these people live, and this is where we build up to the celestial kingdom in verse 7. But they reside in a presence of God on a globe like a sea of glass and fire, where all things for their glory are manifest, past, present, and future, and are continually before the Lord.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? The concept of time. It seems like in heaven there's no concept of time, as in God can see always and see previous, because the world is a human thummim. But it talks about in verse 4, is not the reckoning of God's time, angels' time, prophets' time, and man's time according to the planet on which they reside? And the answer is yes. All planetary systems have different time frames, and we can see that in our own solar system. The Earth, 365 days. Saturn, 1 year in Saturn is 29 and a half years for Earth. So, it's not as easy to say, well, God's time is just whatever, because everything is all determined on how far away from the sun you are, I guess,
Well, and the faster you go, the slower time is, right? The faster you get to the speed of light, the slower time travels. Also another interesting thing. Catch us on our next podcast about astronomy.
With Neil deGrasse Tyson, special guest.
Yeah.
So, but what is interesting about that is, I don't think Joseph Smith would have really known any of that. Like, that's pretty. I mean, it's a complex thought when you really think about it. So it's really interesting that Joseph Smith is able to just spout that from a question.
Right.
And, because that is verse 4 is a question.
And yeah, he's relaying things that he has seen and things that he has been taught. So I'm guessing a picture paints 1,000 words. He's seen these things. He sees the degrees of glory.
So, all right, well, let's talk about this white stone then that it speaks of. So in Revelations chapter 2, verse 17, it says, well, I'm going to read halfway through. To him that overcometh will I give him to eat of the hidden manna. So that is explaining, I mean, back in the old days, that's how you would go into the temple, right? That the manna, take the unleavened bread and the wine and go into the temple. So he's basically saying this is the temple, in the temple. And will give him a white stone, and in the stone a new name written, which no man knoweth, saving he that receiveth it. Right? But then it gives us more of a detailed description about what's so important about it. In verse 10, the white stone, mentioned in Revelations, will become a Urim and Thummim to each individual who receives one, whereby things pertaining to a higher order of kingdoms will be made known. So we will all receive this Urim and Thummim. God has a Urim and Thummim, that's how he can see things. And just as you mentioned there, the whole planet of him is a Urim and Thummim. And a white stone, in verse 11, as a white stone is given to each those who come into the celestial kingdom, whereon is a new name written, which no man knoweth, save he that receiveth it. The new name is the key word. So what it's telling us here is, to get into the celestial kingdom, you need a key word. And according to the Revelations, this key word is given to you after you go into the temple. So you go to the temple, you get this key word. When you go to the celestial kingdom, you're given a Urim and Thummim. So how important is it then that we do all of this temple work now, so in the millennium, everyone's already ready with their key when it's time to go to the celestial kingdom? Yes, your word is to go to the celestial kingdom, but hold on, do you have the key to go in? No, I don't. Well, you better go to the temple, because Revelations tells you the only way you can get this key is to go to the temple.
Love that. And Joseph has been doing the endowment, not for long. The 12 have done the endowment, a couple of others. So not a lot of people have done it, but Joseph is aware of this. There's a story where Hiram is married a second lady. His first wife dies, and he asks Joseph. He says, "How I'm going to get sealed to this lady. She'll be my second wife, but I actually really want to be sealed to my dead wife, Jeshua, her name is. Can that happen?" And Joseph says, "Yes. You can. We can do the work for them in the temple exactly how we do the work for the baptisms for the dead." And so the saints are stoked. I feel like now I understand this more, that I will be more excited to do work in the temple.
So, like I said, this was really just Joseph answering a lot of questions. So we've talked, and you know more about this than I do. We've talked about this before, that Joseph was asked many times, when will Christ come again? And he says in 15, he asked the Lord and said, Joseph, my son, if thou livest till thou art 85 years old, thou shalt see the face of the Son of Man.
He learnt this information some time ago. He isn't just learning it just now. He's aware of it. But at the time, there is someone, Keith Erickson told us a name. There was a particular person that was saying that they know the date when the second coming is. And Joseph is asked, is this correct? He says this in verse 15, that if he lives to 85, he'll see the Son of Man. Therefore, let this suffice. Now, whether that means that the second coming will happen, I'm not sure. It doesn't explicitly say it, but it certainly says that Joseph will see the Son of Man. I would guess on an earthly sphere, if he lives that long.
Yeah, I was trying to look up if anything of significance happened in the year that Joseph would be 85. The only thing they could find was the plural marriage manifesto, where they abolished plural marriage in 1890.
A lot of other things I like in this section, Clive. We've been talking for a little while now, but I always like to remind myself, actually, about verse 18 and 19. Whatever principle of intelligence we attain unto, if it will rise with us in the resurrection. If a person gains knowledge and intelligence in this life through his and obedience than another, he will have so much advantage in the world to come. When I think about this, I think about a lesson that you gave. I recall where you were talking about, imagine if you're in heaven and you're in a hallway with lots of doors, and in the first door there's that you get taught something, in the second door you get taught something else, in the third door all the way up to millionth door there's a lot to learn, million doors. If you've learned the first 100 doors, you're going to get to go straight to door 101, and therefore kind of skip the queue. And I think about that when I think about how much we try to learn testimony growing behaviors.
Daniel, this is something I've always wondered about. I didn't quite understand it until just recently. This is 20 and 21. There is a law irrevocably decreed in heaven before the foundation of the world, upon which all blessings are predicated. And when we obtain any blessing from God, it is by obedience to that law upon which it is predicated. Now, I've read that many, many times thinking, listen to how smart I sound, but never really understanding it. But from what I understand now, every law has a blessing attached to it, and each law has a different blessing. I'll give you an example. The fifth of the 10 Commandments, honor thy father and thy mother, that's the law. The blessing that goes along with that law is that thy days may be long upon the land. Another blessing is God asks us to forgive others. That's the law. The blessing is he will then forgive us if we forgive others. So we've talked about before how, repenting or being good isn't like a vending machine where you go, okay, I'm good, beep, beep, here's my blessing. But each blessing does have, each law does have a blessing attached to it. But it doesn't mean, like we've said, it's not just, all right, I was good today, give me that blessing. One thing that I will mention about it is 132, verse 5. For all who will have a blessing at my hand shall abide the law which was appointed for that blessing, and the conditions thereof as were instituted from before the foundation of the world. So there is a blessing, there is a law, and there is a blessing appointed to it, but it's on condition thereof. So it's not just be good for 2 minutes and here's that blessing. It's continually be good. It's not honor thy father and thy mother and do the dishes and then you'll live forever. It's continue to do that. So yes, there's a blessing connected to it, but it's not just simple.
I think that this one is even more simpler than what you're saying. I read this as the Christ tells us the great law is to love the Lord thy God. And I think it's as simple as that. There is a law of irrevocably decreed in heaven before the foundation of the world, and that is, if you love the Lord, therefore do all things, charity, all of that kind of jazz. That's how I read it in a little bit more simpler way. That there's just this one great commandment.
Maybe, but it's just, I get that from 21. When we obtain any blessing from God, it is obedience to that law upon which it is predicated.
Sure.
That particular law. Which, yeah, I mean, there's no wrong answer in should we be good or should we not be good, really, is there?
Yeah.
But, I guess that's my opinion of how I see it.
All right, let's move on. So another really short one, 131.
This is something almost brand new. This is in the celestial kingdom, there are 3 heavens or degrees. This isn't talking about the celestial, terrestrial, or telestial. This is saying that in the celestial kingdom, there are 3 degrees of glory. So on top of that, in the celestial kingdom are 3. To obtain the highest of the celestial kingdom, you must be sealed in the temple. And then there's 2 other degrees in the celestial kingdom, but those people that aren't sealed can still obtain it. Bruce R. McConkie said, there will be no marriage in the lower 2 degrees of the celestial kingdom. Those who go there remain separate and single forever. So, yes, you can be a good person and you can do all the right things and you can choose not to marry, and that's okay because you can still get to the celestial kingdom. But there's a different degree in the celestial kingdom for those that aren't married. And so, you to gain the increase, Joseph Smith describes increase as having children. So to gain the degree that gets the increase, that becomes the God of all these children, you must be married. But it's still okay. I mean, I'd see that as it's still okay not to be married because you're still in the celestial kingdom.
Well, your promise is to be an angel of God. If you're not in the highest degree of the celestial, you still get a pretty good time. You still have you're still in the celestial kingdom, the greatest of all places.
What's interesting as well, because we've talked about how angels are people that have lived on the earth. If you've lived on this earth, you'll be an angel of this earth. So if you're an angel of God, it means that you're not going to his earth and speaking to them. So therefore, you must be the conduit or the messenger in between God and his children who are now God's. And so you've still got that connection with God, that in between angel that speaks to people.
That's definitely something I've thought of before.
And then, it's impossible for a man to be saved in ignorance. So, it seems quite separate from everything that was said. But basically, you can't choose not to learn something like, oh, I don't want to know that because then I'll be judged for it. Well, no, you're automatically judged now because you're saying that I want to be ignorant of that fact.
Yeah.
And then, again, another scientific thing that Joseph never would have known, verse 7 and verse 8, that all spirit is matter. There's nothing spiritual, or there's nothing that we have that can ever be, or not ever be. It's always pure. It's always spirit is matter, and the more fine and pure one can be discerned by purer eyes. So there's eternal matter is something that wasn't really a concept understood back then. It was known by few scientists, but really, I mean, back then everything was sort of religious based. So science was very religious based anyway.
Well, Clive, so section 132, this is the last revelation Joseph has in his life. He certainly goes on to talk to people still, and he's still keeping a journal. But in terms of what we're reading about the Doctrine and Covenants, this is the last one. And what's happened is Joseph is trying to work up the courage to talk to Hiram. He wants to talk to Hiram about the doctrine of the polygamous doctrine. Hiram actually teaches people that it's not right. In the end, it is Brigham Young. This is sometime later that ends up having a one-on-one with Hiram and teaches him about the doctrine. And so anyway, Hiram's accepted it, and he's married. And he, like I mentioned at the top of the show, he marries his first wife in a for the dead ceremony, and his new wife as a living. And anyway, Hiram comes and talks to Joseph, and things are quite troubled. There's a brewing. Emma is aware of some of the marriages, not all of them. She's party to some. She approves of some. In one case, Joseph gets sealed to the same person twice, because on the second occasion, Emma is there as a witness. So it's a little bit messy, a little bit murky. And Hiram comes to Joseph and talks to him. And Joseph then gives this enormous in-depth section. And this is kind of his last thing that we read about. This is probably a section that I don't like, when people pick, oh, I'll just take this verse and talk about this one verse. I'll talk about these lines out of that verse, because the whole thing kind of builds into each other, and there's context behind what's going on. But it is about, there is some amazing things in here, and there's a lot in here in 132.
Yeah, there is. And yeah, you're right. It's hard. You can't just nitpick. Like, I've got this whole bit highlighted, and I've written at the very bottom, get married, because I don't really know how to explain what it is. But, like there is a lot of explanation here about what happens in plural marriage and how it was okay. And, he used the examples of Abraham, and Abraham was told to sacrifice his son Isaac, knowing that killing was wrong, but because God asked of it, it was okay. And so he went to do it, and obviously he was stopped. But, David and Goliath, he had many wives and concubines, and that was okay. But, his sin was because Bathsheba's husband, he put him on the front line to kill him on purpose so that he could take Bathsheba to wife. So he's given examples of these are things that are okay, but they haven't worked in the past because of these other reasons, but yeah, like I said, it's really in depth. It's really explaining it. And, I guess you could really spend a long time, verse 19 is massive. It's like 3 or 4 verses in one.
Yeah.
And it goes just really detail about the sealing covenant and the importance of living with your family forever. How do you explain that without reading it?
Verse 16, Clive, is refers to what we're talking about before, but I'll read 15 and 16. So we cover a few things. Therefore, if a man marry him a wife in the world, and he marry her not by me, nor by my word, and he covenant with her, so long as he is in the world, and she with him, their covenant and marriage are not of force when they are dead. And when they are out of the world, therefore, they are not bound by any laws when they are out of the world. Therefore, when they are out of the world, they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are appointed angels in heaven, which angels are ministering servants to minister for those who are worthy of far more, and an exceeding and an eternal weight of glory. This is what we were referencing before in section 131.
Again, it's not saying that you cannot or you must get married, but, it is saying that this is their fate. And, marriage is important, eternal marriage is important, families to be together forever, but, there is other ways about it. Good people can still go to heaven. And it's difficult because, people have so many questions. Well, what about this? What about this? What happens if this exact situation? And, Joseph can't really break it down and say, well, if this happens, then this happens, and this. So he's just trying to give all the points and all the information and all the doctrine here for then you to decide how you move forward. And, for me, when I was out teaching people, I think eternal families was something that really clicked with a lot of families with younger children or with parents that have died more recently. It was that they went, interesting, because in their mind, we'll be brothers and sisters in heaven. So this marriage is just for this world, and then when we go to heaven, we'll worship God forever with our brothers and sisters. But that's just not the case. We'll be a family forever, a family unit. And I think that really resonates with a lot of people.
I think it's hard to talk about section 132, but the doctrine is something that we are so happy about. But I guess in the world, it's so strange, it's so odd to have section 132. And for anyone to not really sure what we're talking about, verse 19 and verse 20 basically give you the promise of what happens if you get married, What happens if you're sealed in the temple? Therefore, in the next life, you are still married. Therefore, in the next life, you can still continue to have seed, a continuation of seed. And in 20, it tells us that they'll be gods because they have no end. Therefore, shall they be from everlasting to everlasting because they continue. Then shall they be above all, because all things are subject to them. Then shall they be gods because they have all power, and the angels are subject unto them. This is the work and the glory. This is God. God, what is your purpose, God? Well, my purpose is to bring to pass the immortality and eternal life of man. What does that mean? Well, in the highest of the highs, those people who are able to follow everything, get to the celestial kingdom, and be married and be sealed, are promised that those individuals will be able to go and be gods themselves. And in all religions that I know, that is very peculiar. But to me, who's grown up in the church, that's very normal. But I can understand how that's quite strange. So, well, let's end it there, Clive. We've talked for a little bit now. Have a read of section 132 yourself, and have a look at any more of those history things that we've talked about as well. Thanks for tuning in to another episode. If you could, hi to Kolob, catch us on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. Subscribe to us there, and we will see you next week.